You have to have a consistent attitude. It's like if the people that are closest to you have no idea what they're going to be getting from you, then they're not going to be able to rely on you and depend on you. What you want to do is you want to develop your attitude to the point that people can expect you to be at your best. People just know that when they see you, they know what they're going to get. They know that I'm going to get the best version of that person because that's the consistency that you've built up for them.
There is something special inside you.
Welcome to GNG Podcast with your host, speaker, best-selling author, Chaz Jackson.
Yo, what's going on, kings and queens? It's your boy Chaz Jackson coming back to you once again, representing GNG GiftInAGift. Our motto is we're all gifted differently to make a difference. I have a difference maker on this show. Guys, my guy Noah Seidel, he's in the building, my next bodyguard, 4th degree black belt. He's ready to shine his light, express more of what he do. And Noah, are you ready to get it, King?
I am ready as I can ever be. I'm ready to do this thing. I've been building it up in my head like all week long. And then last night, I'm like, all right. I'm like, here we go. I'm like,
hey, man, this is going to be phenomenal.
I'm going to get it going.
This episode's yet. I'm excited to get you in front of the audience, and they're eager to learn more about you, how you became being a 4th degree black belt, about your business, Elite Martial Arts, where you have over 20 years of experience shining your light and helping our next generation become stronger versions of themselves. So go into your story for us. How did you get to where you are right now in 2022, the mindset that you have to help elevate our next generation?
Okay, yeah. So how I got into martial arts was actually my parents. They started together. I don't even know exactly how old they were. They were probably, I think, like late teens, early 20s, somewhere around there whenever they got started. And so basically me and both of my siblings, like all of us were pretty much just raised in it right from the get-go. It's like I did pee-wee soccer a little bit, whenever I was in that like 3 and 4 range, but I got in like a few fights and stuff like that. I was pretty physical, and as a lot of people know with soccer, that's definitely soccer doesn't take that well to the physical part of it. People throw red flags everywhere, but
more bows, man. That's it.
Yeah. So my parents, they, as soon as basically I was old enough to get into a martial arts class, they threw me right in there. So I was around, I think, like 4 or 5 whenever I started taking classes myself. And so, yeah, it's pretty much, I've stuck with it my whole life. I was a pretty hardcore competitor I was probably about, I think I was 8 years old whenever I had my first competition. And then I competed, religiously till I was just about 19. And then whenever I kind of stepped into the shoes of being the head instructor of our school, that's when my priorities kind of started to change from focusing on my own competitiveness and stuff like that, and more towards being able to pour into, the younger generation, and not just the younger generation, but whoever's, wanting to train. I've worked with kids, adults, doesn't matter. I love it all. I just love martial arts.
Awesome, man. Thank you for diving deep on how you got to where you are right now. And I know you got a story about some resiliency of getting back into doing martial arts, right? And share a little bit more about that.
One of the biggest things that I like to try and really instill into our students is the ability to keep your head cool and stay calm and basically keep yourself, in the right headspace whenever you're dealing with adversities and things like that. Because I'm not going to say I'm an expert in in tragedy, but I feel like I've dealt with, a lot more than I would have liked to, being at a younger age. Because I'm 24 right now, but everything really hit hard like a few years ago. So basically, my mom and dad, they started the school together, but they kind of just, it wasn't necessarily just like their focus was to make it the main business, you know, the main priority and stuff like that. They just wanted something that all of us, like me and my siblings, can do together as a whole family. And so that's why they started the school, so that, you know, all of us could train together, we could grow together, they could teach us what, you know, they wanted us to learn versus just giving us off to, you know, somebody else. And so martial arts was, like I told you, you know, that's all I've done my whole life. And that was basically, it was what my entire identity, you know, was wrapped around. Like I did two things. I did martial arts and I did church. Like, those were the only two things that I did. And everybody at church knew me as the martial arts guy. You know, that's what people recognize me as. They're like, oh, you're the guy that does all the big kicks and all the flips and all the competitions and stuff like that. It's like, that's pretty much all I was known for. And so, you know, it was tough because my entire identity was wrapped around that, my physical abilities. And so I had to very quickly learn how to shift that based off of what I'm about to tell you now. So my dad, it was in 2018, it was either that or late 2017. It's probably like mid to late 2017 when he was diagnosed. But my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And so that pretty much, you know, as it does with everybody who deals with, you know, a family member who has cancer, it's like it turns your entire world upside down. You know, it's like that's not something that, you know, you can train to prepare yourself for. It's like, you know, you can talk about how to stay cool under pressure. You can see other people go through it and then try and maybe put yourself in their shoes. But it's like, you don't really necessarily know how to handle it until you have to. And then that kind of shows you like where you are on the inside. And so, you know, it was basically at that point, both my older brother and sister had already stopped taking classes, and, you know, they stopped training because it's just not necessarily what the career path that they wanted to go down, which is fine. You know, it's not for everybody, but I always wanted to be a full-time instructor. It's like, I love martial arts. I love teaching it. I love, you know, training up people to be able to do better martial arts than I can do and stuff like that. It's like, I love it. But at this point, it was just pretty much me and my dad teaching all the classes. We had another guy who he worked with us for a little bit before he ended up having to move to Utah, which we want to get him back at some point because he's fantastic. His name is Troy Walker. At this point, it was mostly just me and my dad teaching the classes. But once we found out, you know, obviously that he was diagnosed with cancer, the teaching started getting a little bit more difficult, a little bit more difficult, and a little bit more difficult until eventually, you know, I found myself and, you know, Troy, pretty much both of us were pretty much teaching all of the classes by ourselves. And then whenever Troy told us that, you know, he felt the Lord was calling him to move to Utah to help start a church out there, I was like, well,
wow.
darn.
Wow, yeah.
I'm like, the timing of that, you know, it was definitely difficult. But yeah, so, you know, he moved to Utah, and then it was just me and my dad at that point doing all the teaching. My mom helps out with classes, but the teaching was never really her strong suit or passion. And so at that point, you know, his health really started to decline. But I always I like to say I'm not really a super emotional person. You know, I kind of bought, which is not a healthy thing, by the way. You know, I'm not saying this is the right way to do things, because it definitely got me in the position that I was in later because of it. But yeah, I have a tendency to bottle things up and kind of just push things to the side, and then, you know, just to be able to do what I know I need to do. Like, I knew that once my dad passed away, I was like, okay, we're no longer going to have his income from his other job that he had, which he was a middle school teacher. I'm like, so that income is going to go away. I'm like, the only source of income that we're going to have after that is going to be the martial arts school. I'm like, and I know my mom is going to be an absolute wreck once my dad passes away. So I'm like, at this point, it's kind of up to me to kind of, carry this thing on my back. And so that's what I did. It's like I took everything, pushed it down as deep down as I could possibly get it, so that like I didn't think about it. I didn't, acknowledge it unless I wasn't at the business. It's like when I was at work and I was teaching, I'm like, that was the only thing that I was letting myself think about.
Mm.
But that ended up being probably the worst decision and like worst choice that I could absolutely make for myself. So I ended up, this was after my dad passed away. It was like 3 months later. I woke up, it was actually on the 4th of July, and I noticed that like my feet felt kind of weird, and that my teeth felt slightly numb.
Wow.
And I was like, this feels odd. I'm like, maybe I just slept wrong. And so I went to a pool party with my girlfriend, and we were celebrating the 4th of July, and I'll always hold this over her head, but I told her that my feet felt weird and my teeth felt numb, and I thought I slept weird. And then obviously she laughed at me and started making fun of me and saying like, "Oh, you slept weird? Like, what do you mean your teeth feel weird?" Cutting jokes or whatever, as you do. And then the next day, I noticed my lower back was hurting a lot, and like I was really sensitive to AC. Like I was just driving, and like the AC felt very like prickly on my skin in my car. And so I called my mom up, and I was like, I'm like, I know now that it was definitely the Holy Spirit talking to me, but I was like, I think something's wrong. I'm like, I don't know what it is. But the AC is bothering my skin. My lower back hurts. I'm like, my feet feel weird. My teeth feel slightly numb. I'm like, something seems off. And then she's like, okay, do you want to go to care now and get it checked out and make sure you're all right? I'm like, I'll wait. And then I'm like, I don't think I need to just yet. So then we hung up, and probably, I don't know, maybe like 3 or 5 minutes later, like I definitely felt the Lord telling me like, you need to go. And so I called my mom back. I was like, okay, no, like something's not right. I'm like, we should go. So we went there. They did a bunch of tests on me, and everything came back telling me I was completely healthy. They were like, okay, nothing like in the urine, blood, all of that. I'm like, nothing seems to say that there's anything wrong with you. I'm like, okay. They're like, so my doctor asked me, she was like, okay, what do you think is wrong? I'm like, well, I'm like basing it off the fact that like things are feeling weird from head to toe. I'm like, and they're just random things. I'm like, I feel like it has something to do with my nervous system. And she's like, oh, well, you're right. You have a pulled muscle, or you have a pulled nerve in your glute. Wow. I'm like, okay. I'm like, all right, that doesn't sound too bad. And so she's like, usually with pulled nerves, they're like, it'll probably start to feel worse before it gets better. They're like, so, we'll give you some muscle relaxers and just wait it out in a few days. I'm like, okay. And so then I got my prescription, whatnot, went home, and I was expecting it to get worse because she told me it would before it got better. And it started getting worse and worse and worse. And like the pain in my back got worse and worse to the point that like I was having difficulty sleeping because laying in my bed was painful. And it's like, it just dropped like super quick. I was barely able to put any weight on my legs. And then over the span of a couple of days, I lost the ability to use the bathroom. I lost the ability to sit up straight. Like I couldn't lift my body up. I couldn't move my legs. And so we were like, okay, we need to go to the ER. So we went to the ER, and, they first relieved my bladder because I was almost at the point of my bladder was about to burst because like I just physically could not. And then what
was your age again on this?
What was my what?
Your age? How old were you?
I was 20. Yeah, I was 20 when this happened. I did first thing that they did was, blood work and all that stuff. Everything came back normal, just like it did at the care now. And then we did a CAT scan, and they were like, everything's still completely normal. They're like, we have no idea what's wrong with you. And so they were like, all right, we got to transfer you to a different hospital because, we don't have the equipment to see what all's going on. So they transferred me to a bigger hospital, Medical City Alliance, and we did an MRI, and then that came back completely normal. They're like, all right, everything is telling us that you're completely healthy. You're at like a prime condition, because it's like, like I said, my whole identity was wrapped around the fact that like I was a competitor, I was a hardcore martial arts athlete, like that's all I did. And so they're like, everything's telling us that you're in great health. They're like, we don't know what's going on. So then we did a spinal tap, which is basically you got to lay on this table, and then I'm laying flat on my stomach. This is the table, and then they turn the table up, and then they take a long needle and they stick it into your spine, and they drain your spinal fluid. And so once they did that, they found increased protein in my spinal fluid, which meant I had something called Guillain-Barré. And so basically, once they figured out what it was, they told me, what it does. And basically your immune system, which, defends your body, gets confused and works overtime. And instead of defending your body, it goes after your nervous system. So basically it disconnected all of my muscles from my brain pretty much. And then I was in Medical City Alliance for 3 days, but over those 3 days, I completely lost the ability to move my legs. I was slowly losing the ability to move my arms. It's like my dexterity was going away. I couldn't pick things up anymore. My eyesight was getting blurry. Like I was losing the ability to see also. And then like speaking got harder and harder because my lungs were shutting down. And so then they were like, all right, we got to transfer him to a bigger hospital that has more things. And so they told me, they're like, okay, reality is that your lungs are shutting down on you, just like all the other muscles in your body. It's disconnected. And so they're like, we need to take you to Medical City Fort Worth, and we need to intubate you right away. I'm like, whoa. So, yeah, so they prepared me for it, and I'm like, gotcha. And so, we transferred me to Medical City Fort Worth, and then that very night that they transferred me, it's like they let me know what was going to happen, and then they, put me under, and then I woke up briefly in the middle of it, of the process, but then I fell right back asleep. But then the next morning when I woke up, I had a tube down my throat, and I couldn't move anything. It's like whatever movement I had the day before was completely gone. And so the only thing that I basically could move at that point was I could move my neck still. Like, thank God, because that helped out, not having to stare at the same thing over and over again. But, I could move my neck, I could blink, and then like I could still move my tongue. So it's like I could click with my tongue, and I could do things like that. But that was it. Like, couldn't talk, couldn't do anything else. And yeah, so then.
And what was the time frame in between you found out and you got to that position? How long did it take?
So, like from the time we found out it was Guillain-Barré.
To the point to where all you could do was move your tongue and.
So we found out it was Guillain-Barré. I believe it was the first day that I went to Medical City Alliance. So from the time that we found out what it was to the time of me not being able to move anything and having to be intubated and put on a ventilator, that was like 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah. So to make the long story, very, very long story short, basically, yeah, I got intubated. And then pretty much from that point on, I was in the hospital for just under 2 months. And so I was on the ventilator for a little over a month, basically having to rebuild my lung strength and learn how to breathe on my own again. And then I was doing physical therapy almost every day. Actually, yeah, it was every day. And then, yeah, once I got released, I got discharged from the hospital when I was finally at the point that I could swallow liquids again. So it's like whenever they saw that I could actually drink something on my own, that's when they were like, okay, you're good to leave the hospital. They're like, you can either go to an outpatient facility and, you'll have nurses still taking care of you, or you can go home. They're like, but at this point, you know, I still wasn't able to walk. I still wasn't able to use the bathroom on my own, still barely able to move my arms and stuff like that. So, you know, I told my mom and my sister, I was like, obviously I would like to go home because, you know, I was finally able to talk, because once I got off the ventilator, you know, they worked with me on being able to speak again and stuff like that. But I'm like, I'm ready to go home. But I'm like, I'm telling you guys, I'm like, if I do that, I'm like, it's going to be a lot of work for you, for you two. I'm like, and you're going to have to help me with things that you're not going to want to have to help me with.
Cause your dad was gone at this point, right? He had already.
Yeah. We were probably about maybe 4 or 5 months after he had passed away at this point.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So came home, and then over the, I would say like 5-6 months, like half a year or something like that, I was having physical therapy maybe like 2-3 times a week, and then having to learn how to walk again, having to learn how to hold things again, having to basically rebuild all of the muscles that you don't think you need, but very much need. So yeah. It was a lot. It was a lot.
No, man, like I'm speechless. I'm sure the people that's listening is speechless. You have such a testimony of resiliency, of so many circumstances. I mean, from your dad, condolences about your dad, by the way. I know we talked some off camera, but you know, the resiliency, and so many times where you could just throw up the white flag and just give up, you know, play the victim role. But you are so victorious over all this, you know, and giving thanks to the Lord throughout it all, knowing that, you know, it was his will through his son, Jesus Christ, to get you to where you are, to impact based off of your circumstance, situation that you had to overcome. I mean, it's so mind blowing and just so inspiring to see where you are right now and to learn more about who you are. I want to say thank you for what you're doing and not giving up, sharing your story with us, and just, I mean, you're inspiring me, man. you have inspired me. So, and I know the people that's listening right now, you inspired them to keep pushing forward and to never give up. And I know Elevate Martial Arts, that's a passion of yours. And whenever you hear that, based off of your story, what does that mean to you? Providing a tip or technique for a young man that's striving to grow in personal development. That's what GNG podcast is all about. What does that mean to you, and how would you inspire them right now?
Well, one of the biggest things, it's like, so one of the things that we do at our martial arts schools, every month we go over a new life skill. But a lot of the things that I have been talking about recently, and I shared this with you over you know, through email. And one of the things that I've been really focusing a lot on trying to instill in our students is just being somebody that people can rely on. And to me, that's really, really important, because after going through everything that I went through, and it's like, you know, I gave you the really, 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 really short version, because it's like, even after I finished physical therapy, I only finished physical therapy when I was kind of at the point that I could walk on my own again, and, you know, do like.
How long was this? How long was the scope of your recovery? Like, how long did it take you to get back to where you are right now?
So to get to the point to where I can do everything that I can now, I would say it was probably maybe like, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years before like I was finally able to really kick again and really like move close to the way that I used to move. But it was a very long process, and there are still things that are slightly off. Like I don't fully have all of the ability to move all the muscles in my face yet, as well as like my ankle stability is still, you know, it's like, it's good, but it's not as good as it used to be yet. I'm just going to say yet.
I like it. Speaking in existence, man. I'm telling you, it's going to happen.
You know, it's like after going through everything that I went through, I realized, I'm like, you know, it's not like I did anything to deserve any of that. You know, it's not like I made somebody mad and my life just went in a complete downward spiral because of that. It's like, you know, things happen. And, you know, especially I like for all of my, you know, Christian friends and all that, it's like I tell them, I'm like, you know, if you choose to believe in God, you also have to believe in Satan. You know, you got to believe that there's somebody coming against you, and it doesn't matter, you know, how good you do. It doesn't matter, you know, if you do everything the right way. It's like things happen. You know, sometimes things happen to people that you care about. Sometimes things happen to you that it's like you didn't do anything to deserve it. You didn't do anything to cause it, but you have to have the correct mindset and the right skills to be able to just deal with those things. And so whenever I talk with my students about being somebody that people can rely on, it's like, you know, you're preparing yourself for when difficult things happen, because not everybody does. You know, not everybody expects things to happen. And it's like, you shouldn't walk around expecting bad things to happen to you all the time. That's a terrible way to live. All right. But it's like, you know, things happen. You know, COVID happens and your ability to connect with people gets cut off. And like, you know, we went almost, you know, half a year or whatever, however long it was in 2020 without being able to really, you know, get in large groups and hang out with people. You know, it's like things happen that it's like, it's not like any of us created COVID, you know, but, you know, just through simple things every single day. Like right now we're talking about your attitude, and we're talking about how, you know, you have the ability to decide what kind of attitude you're going to have no matter what the situation looks like. You know, things may look off on the outside, but it's like you can keep yourself composed. You can keep yourself, you know, under control. And it's like things like that are the biggest thing that, especially with young men, that it's very important to me whenever I speak to, you know, our teenage guys and our younger guys as well, that like I let them know that like people are going to look up to you. People are going to depend on you. People are going to, when things get tough, it's like when everything happened with my dad, it's like if I would have just shut down and like decided, I'm like, you know what, life sucks. I'm like, what? I've been living my life a certain way just for all this, you know, crap to happen. It's like, why should I continue living the way that I have been living? You know, it's like, might as well just enjoy myself. Might as well just go out and do the things that I want to do. It's like, if I would have done that, it's like, we wouldn't be open today. It's like, we wouldn't have the business.
We wouldn't be on GNG podcast right now. And thank you so much for not doing that.
It's like none of that would have been happening. But it's like, I felt that I'm like, okay, I know my mom is going to be depending on me. I'm like, she's going to be relying on me to be able to keep my head in a good place. And then, you know, it's like, so I did what I have to do. But because of that, we are in a position today that, you know, we're able to, you know, minister and through martial arts and be able to touch hundreds of lives and, you know, families, parents, kids. It's like, you know, but that's only because I worked on being able to keep my head in the right state during difficult times. It's like, you know, your attitude is one of the most important things that you can develop. And right now, one of the references that I use the last couple of days is McDonald's, for example. You know, whether or not you think McDonald's is good or not, it's like one of the reasons why McDonald's is so successful is because people know exactly what they're going to get. You know, it's like, it may not be the best tasting. It may not always be, put together the best. And they may even give you the complete wrong order. But it's like, you know, when you picture the taste of chicken nuggets in your head or the taste of a cheeseburger from McDonald's, it's like, you know exactly what it's going to taste like. And so you go there and you get exactly what you expected. It's like when you eat it, you're like, this tastes exactly like what I was expecting. And that's why they're so successful, is because they're consistent. And your attitude needs to be the same way. It's like, you have to have a consistent attitude. It's like, if the people that are closest to you have no idea what they're going to be getting from you, then they're not going to be able to rely on you and depend on you. If they think to themselves, like, okay, am I going to get, I'll just use myself. Am I going to get the Noah that is kind, or am I going to get the Noah that's in a crappy mood? Am I going to get the Noah that doesn't want to be here and is showing it through his body language? Or am I going to get the Noah that's energetic and, excited? Am I going to get the Noah that if I ask for help for something, he's going to be like, and like, throw my head around and all that? Or am I going to get the guy that just helps out immediately? And it's like, what you want to do is you want to develop your attitude to the point that people can expect you to be at your best. People just know that when they see you, they know what they're going to get. They know that I'm going to get the best version of that person, because that's the consistency that you've built up for them. And so they can rely on you to get to that. And so I think as young men, it's like, learn how to deal with difficulties internally. Don't show it for everybody to know what you're feeling 24/7. You don't have, if you're frustrated, you don't have to sit here and throw a fit in front of everybody. If you're exhausted, you don't have to whine and moan and groan about it. It's like, you can handle that stuff and you can deal with it. Everybody has emotions, everybody has difficulty, but it's like, if your mood and your emotions are constantly causing you to swing up and down and left and right, it's like, people aren't going to know whether or not they can depend on you, because you're not consistent. And so I would say consistency with your attitude is a huge part of having resilience,
Man, oh man, my God. Noah, he's on fire right now. He just did a mic drop. So many nuggets that was given right there, brother. Whoever's listening right now, I know you are so mind blown by this giant story about the application point. So many that was just given just now. I would love to know, whoever's listening, what application point that Noah just shared. So many. The biggest one that kind of stood out to me was, things happen, and your attitude. What are you going to do about it when it happens? Again, like I mentioned before, you can play that victim role or that victorious role, right? You can allow your attitude to be poison to others, or it can be medicine to heal others, and God, this has been so fruitful. Such an amazing episode, Noah. Thank you so much for diving deep and being on GNG podcast. I know there's people that's listening right now. It's like, I want to get in front of what Noah has, what he's representing, the brand that he's presenting to himself or presenting to us based on this podcast episode. How can someone reach out to you to get your services, Noah? Can you share your contact information?
Yeah.
All of your.
I'll give you the list of all of our different contacts. So we have our email, which is eaglema@yahoo.com. There you go. And then we have our actual business is located at 943 Winscott Road in Benbrook. So it's Elevate Martial Arts. If you just Google, Elevate Martial Arts, you'll most likely just come right across of our website. And then our phone number is 817-370-0839. So you can reach us in any one of those ways. And yeah, we're always looking to have people.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much again for shining your light on GNG podcast. Noah, one of my favorite quotes by Maya Angelou, she said, there is no greater agony than the bearing of an untold story inside of them. Agony means mental suffering. Yep. And I'm just wondering how many people will suffer without hearing your story, Noah. You have an amazing testimony, and continue to share that story, because your story is going to be oxygen to someone suffocating in the DFW area and across the world. So I'm excited to see what God's doing with Elevated Martial Arts in your life, your family's life, our community's lives. And I'm excited to see how 2022 is going to serve you and the blessings is going to be poured upon you, man. It's an overwhelming experience just being in front of you and hearing all the knowledge and aspects that you have going. So yeah, thank you for blessing GNG podcast audience with your time and your presence, brother.
There's one last thing is like one thing that we really like to try and do with Elevate Martial Arts is we want to do our best not to just work with students, but work with parents also. And one thing that, I try and work on a lot in class, as well as with our parents, is like, a lot of times their kids, if they break down or something, maybe like something is difficult and they're having a hard time getting it, maybe they might break down or run off the mat. And the next thing you know, you'll see, parents that, they're like, oh, it's okay. It's okay. It's all right. You don't have to go back in until you're ready. But it's like, personally, obviously I'm not a parent yet. It's like, I've worked with kids for a long time now. And I love working with kids. I'm not a parent yet, but from a coach's standpoint, I believe that a big part of teaching that resilience is not letting your kids quit, not allowing your kids to cave under their emotion. I was just telling, a couple kids earlier this week, it's okay to cry. It's like everybody has those moments whenever you get a little overwhelmed and a little bogged down. But it's like what you continue to do in that moment is going to be the type of habit that you form. It's like if you get super emotional, which some people do, whenever I was a kid, I was a crier. I was all the time. But it's like,
my tears too, man.
It happens. It happens. Like I'm not going to sit here and tell you, you got to stop crying. It's like, no, it's fine. If you're crying, that's fine. But if your tears cause you to stop working and stop growing, that's a problem. And so it's like, when you break down or when you have those moments as parents, it's good. It's in my opinion, it's good to make sure that you don't let them stop doing what they're doing. It's like, continue to push them and continue to make sure that they finish. That's the most important thing. They got to finish. One of the, you were talking about being a victor and a victim. And one of the things that whenever my dad, was teaching classes that he would always tell us is the difference between a victor and a victim is you.
Wow.
He would also, he would say, sorry, it wasn't a victor and a victim. It was a champ and a chump. That was it. Yeah. Whenever you said that, the victor and victim, it made that pop in my head. But yeah, it wasn't victor and victim. It was champ and chump. He said the difference between a champ and a chump is you. And so it's like, I like to keep that in mind, that it's like, it's only one letter, but it's like, you have the ability to decide whether or not you continue to push through it or you quit. It's like, all it takes is one little decision. It's like, it may be difficult and you may not necessarily finish the way you wanted to finish, but you still finished. And that's what's most important.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The way you finish, that is such a key aspect to take in mind. And again, audience, let us know, reach out to this giant man. Like I said, he's doing some phenomenal things, and he's allowing young people to stand on his shoulders so that they can see farther in life. So again, thank you again, Noah. And I'm gonna go ahead and lead us out, brother. I told each and every one of you this was going to be a phenomenal episode. I know you guys are so excited to go back and listen to this bad boy again. If you didn't get your pen and paper the first time, like I asked you to, go ahead, pause and rewind this bad boy. Take down some application points. Let's learn how to apply these tips and techniques to help grow ourselves spiritually and mentally. And I want you to stay up with GNG. More episodes coming soon. I want you to do two things for me, family. Keep that crown on your heart. And please remember this. We are God's echo. I love each and every one of you. Peace.
Thank you for listening to GNG Podcast. Remember, you are gifted differently to make a difference. Please visit chazjacksonspeaks.org and let's continue to grow together. God bless.